Okay, so let's start. We have a lot to cover today. So thank you very much for coming. My name is Tal Gibish, and I'm the founder of Gibish Consulting. We are a boutique relocation immigration company, and we assist people in their move to Germany. We are based in Berlin. I personally live in Berlin already for the last 11 years. I'm originally from Tel Aviv, but we operate all over Germany. Today, we are going to talk about starting fresh, about preparing for your move to Germany. Before I start talking about that, and then I'm going to roll, so I ask if you can keep your microphones on mute. And if you have any questions, please write it in the chat section, and then we can answer from there. I'm already putting our website address so you can have it. What we're going to talk about today. So first of all, understanding the big picture. What does it mean? What preparation means? Why is this important? Setting the foundation regarding broad categories of what you need to bring with you. And then we're going to talk about adopting the change and how to prepare, like practical strategies of how to prepare to move to Germany. And then we're going to have our guest speaker, Mr. Brandon Drayer. And he's an American who recently, well, that's last year already, moved to Berlin, and he will be telling his story. And then we both answer for questions. We also got a few questions in advance. I tried to answer most of them during my presentation, which is not PowerPoint presentation. I'm not a fan of those, but I'm sure we're going to have more through the way. So let's start. Why preparation matters for a smooth relocation. So it seems a little bit like I'm stating the obvious, but it's not really obvious. People usually think that they can come here. When I'm saying here, sorry, it's Germany in general. People think, yeah, I can just take my suitcase and go, and then we'll see. So to say that you have to prepare for a move like that, that would change your life. After all, let's be honest, it's life-changing step to make. So you have to prepare for it. How long before? That depends. This webinar, we're talking about individuals, families, but not family oriented. If you're family, you probably need more time to prepare. We're going to have our next webinar. We're going to have monthly webinars, and the next webinar on February 20th, we're going to have more family oriented. So how long before we have families who started a year and a half before the planned move? We have individuals who start a year and something before the move. The shortest relocation that we had was 10 days. I can say I'm very proud of it. It's very hard. Don't do this. That's to do the preparation backwards. What does it mean, the preparation? It needs things have to be done in your origin country before you do the move. So you have to do research. That's the first step. Research can be done on the internet, Facebook group, Instagram, Snapchat, many TikTok, I know. For those of us who are not American and not going to be banned from the app. So it's very important to do your research. Ask friends who moved to Germany, family, others that you don't know, do your research. Research regarding the weather, the location, everything that you can think of. But Please note that on the internet, there are people who give information, which is very nice and very kind. Some of them give the wrong information or misinformation, which means they either trolls who don't want you to come to Germany or just want to mess up your life, and that happens. Or that they just don't know and they think they know, so they just give the wrong answer. How to differentiate? Good question. Critical thinking, I would say, but also we are here to answer and give the right answers and the more accurate ones. I'll give you an example. I once had a client that asked me if it's true what they said that they're hunting certain type of people in the streets, let's say immigrants, like the ICE raids right now in the US, because he heard from someone on Facebook that this is the situation. No. So critical thinking and common sense. So I know it sounds a little bit stupid, but no question and no wonder is stupid. So it's important research. Choosing location. Choose your location, your destination wisely. It means if you're an American and you want to be or you want to be an English teacher, then it would be less productive for you to move to a city close to Ramstein in south of Germany with a lot of Americans. Then your relative advantage would be gone. So make your choice wisely. It's about the location and also about the time that you move to Germany. Winter time is not very favorable here. We're not Iceland, so it very depends where you land in Germany. In Berlin, for example, we don't have that much snow. We freeze for nothing, mostly. Today is actually very warm. It's 11 degrees Celsius, so it's very nice. But usually you freeze for nothing, no snow. In Bavaria, for example, it's very cold, but worthy. You get a lot of snow. Some places are very rainy, like Hamburg or Rostock in the north. So if you don't like rain, but you like snow, the south is better for you. If you don't like the cold, maybe reconsider Germany. So the time to move also depends on it. If you move during the winter, it would be dark, it would be cold, and people are not tending to smile that much. So no, just joking. They smile all the time. So it's very, if you want to make your move productive, then choose a time wisely. If you have a family, for example, and you want to come at the end of the year, school year, at the origin country, but you don't know when the school year starts in Germany at the place that you chose, then you have to choose wisely. In some states, Germany has 16 states, and they have different rules and sometimes different starting times of school years. So you have to figure out before which date is the one in the state that you're moving to, and then you can continue on deciding and or booking flight tickets, all the rest. Work demand. As I said, if you're going to be an English teacher, so your place is probably not in the south of Germany, next to Ramstein. But for example, if you're in high tech, then it's most probably that your place is in Berlin. Berlin is very hospitable for high tech. They have hubs, they have benefits for high tech companies, startups. So Berlin is the place if you're in programming or developing or stuff like that. Stuttgart is more heavy industry, Düsseldorf as well. Hamburg is more movie theater, entertainment industry, and so forth. Frankfurt is for finance. Bonn is very diplomatic, I would say, since it used to be the former capital of West Germany. And of course, the housing situation. Now, upfront, housing situation is not good in every big city in Germany. It doesn't matter if it's Berlin, it's Frankfurt, Munich, Hamburg, or Köln. Dortmund is a little bit better, but most of the big cities in Germany, it's hard to find a place. You do have to, if you choose Berlin, for example, you don't have to live in the middle of Berlin. In the middle of Berlin is very kind of vague because Berlin is very big, 4 million people. And only in my neighborhood, I live in Charlottenburg, my neighborhood is 350,000 people. So it's all relative, but you can live kind of like not in very central place, but more to the side. And then you would probably find better housing situation. Also, to learn how the systems work. The financial system here, banks, credit cards, cash, how does it work? How does it work with bank accounts? How does it work with paying with credit cards? For example, American Express is not accepted in Germany, in most of Germany. Fees for paying with credit cards is usually high because Germans, they like, and I think it's very, very, very smart. They like when you pay when you have the money and not if you might have money sometime in the future. So debit card is more popular here than credit card. And of course, you have cash. Healthcare system is totally different than the US, but also from other countries. How the system is built is different. How you navigate the system is very important. So what is public, what is private? So it's very important, of course, if you have children, to learn about the school system, about the kindergarten system, and if you're the age of 18 and above, how the university and um, professional training is working here. Just a tip from those of you who came from the US, we have no college. When you see college somewhere, it's probably collègue, like they have in France, and then it means something that is premium high school, let's say. So this is something that needs to be checked before you move. And of course, the employment and social rights that you might have. And I'll give you one example. I have a client who's supposed to move in a few months, and he was offered a work contract, but they said okay, it's an American company, and they offered him, yeah, we're going to give you a lot of vacation days, 10 vacation days. Now, for Americans, that's a lot. I know other people, like in Israel, for example, that's basically the average of what they have. I think it's the minimum by law. In Germany, 20 is the minimum by law. So you have to know your rights before you move, and definitely if you're looking for a job. So this is very important. Okay. What to organize before moving? First of all, to take care of the bank account and financial documents. These are the things that have to be handled because afterwards you're going to be in Germany, no matter where you're from, probably flight. So to jump on a plane and arrange do the arrangement after you move to Germany, that would be very difficult. So you have to collect financial documents and talk to your bank to see what can be done, what has to be. We have specific service for preparing for the relocation. I'm going to talk about it in a minute. But basically have all your financial documents gathered. The same with Social Security. What your rights, what you're supposed to have and receive after you live in the country, before you live in the country, have to have all of these organized. Personal documents, ID, passport, valid passport. sorry, I had people who just, when we started the service of relocation prep, then that we have the whole process working from A to Z, beginning to end, before the person is moving to Germany and after, with all the bureaucracy. But it's not only bureaucracy. If you have something that is very specific to you changing name, for example, this is something that you have to bring with you. Work documents, pay slips, work contracts, stuff like that. These are things that you should have with you. Health documents, even if you're healthy. Short summary from your physician would be very helpful. Other health documents that you might have, and definitely, if you have any chronic illness, they need to know. The doctors, when you go into the doctors here, when you go to the hospital or whatever, then they would have to know, please bring documents with you. If you start looking for an apartment before you move to Germany, know what you have to gather before you apply for an apartment. Also, make sure that you know, after you move into Germany, how to look for an apartment, for a long-term apartment, so you would know what documents you need to bring with you. That's for documents. Saving money is extremely important. Yes, you might have savings, but don't trust to find a job from day one. I have a client that keep postponing his arrival because he can't find a job from his origin country. And this is his choice. And he has European citizenship, everything is fine, but he doesn't have enough money saved up to come and be at least for 1 month without work. Please take under consideration, if you need some kind of visa or residence permit, I don't know where you're from. I'll talk in the visa residence permit difference in a minute. But if you need some kind of work permit, don't count on day one. Even the fastest track in Germany for work permit, which is in Berlin, from the big cities, it takes at least a month. So be prepared to be a while, at least, without work, and plan accordingly. Now, before I go to mentality adjustments that are needed, so let's talk for a moment about the differences between visa and residence permit. I see the names here, and I think that a lot of you are Americans and Israelis, and a little bit from other places. And so these countries don't need a visa. Visa is the permit that you get from the embassy, German embassy or consulate in your origin country, because you cannot enter Germany without Schengen visa, for that matter. Residence permit is when you arrive to Germany and then you need a permit to stay, to work, to live in Germany, not in general. So if you're coming, for example, from India, you would need a visa. If you're a student from India, you would need to issue a student visa in the consulate in India and then to reapply for a student visa in Germany. The same for each work. If you're from the countries of the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Israel, Japan, and South Korea, you don't need to apply for a visa before. European EU, of course, don't need any permit. So you can come to Germany, and within the 3 first months, you can take care of your arrangements for residence permit. So you have 3 months. Important thing, if you apply before the end of the 3 months, the count stops. So if you applied after 2 months, then it stops. And you're staying legal until you are processed and have a meeting and a decision is made on your case. You are legally in Germany. You're not able to work, but you're legally staying here. Mentality, I will answer that. The question is a little bit, wow, okay. Okay. Mentality adjustments. So a lot of our clients come from politically unstable and very different mentality environment and countries. Which means when they come here to Germany, they experience everything is quiet. And it's really stressful because you're not used to it. You used to cars honking, you used to people shouting in the streets. Sometimes you see police everywhere. It's very stressing to have nothing of this. Now, I don't say nothing at all. I can tell you that I did relocation tour once with a family, and they came to Berlin. And Berlin is very noisy in my eyes, but my perspective is totally different because I live here for so long. So they came and they said, "Wow, Berlin is very quiet," and I'm like, "Okay, where are you from?" I'm gonna say New York. And I'm like, "Okay, we got the problem." So it's definitely quieter. On the other hand, I had a couple that came to the tour in Berlin after they went to Leipzig, which is in Saxon. And they came and said, Berlin is so noisy. And I'm like, where are you from? They say, we're from Tel Aviv, but we came from Leipzig. Okay, Leipzig is like a cemetery. So this is like super quiet. So this is adjustment that you have to know that you would have to make. And the stress level would probably go up at the beginning. But when you get used to the quiet, the not as stressful day, if you make it not stressful, of course, your brain would resist at the beginning, but afterwards it's going to be easier. So you get used to it. Also, no cars. In most, not all, big cities, you have very efficient public transportation. Saying that, in Berlin, there's a strike of most of the public transportation on Monday, but it doesn't happen that often. And there are other means of transportation, but also people who got used to use a car all the time would have to, for their own convenience, not to use a car. It's less expensive, it's much nicer. Public transportation is really effective in places like Munich, Frankfurt, Hamburg, and in Berlin. For example, if you're moving to Karlsruhe, it's less, wise to count on public transportation. Have a car. That would probably be it. Sorry. Okay. So, practical strategies for embracing a new culture and environment. This is a little bit tricky. Learn German. Now, learn German, it really depends on what you do and what you aim for. I know a lot of people use Duolingo. Duolingo is nice when you're away and you want to know how to say Guten Morgen, but it doesn't take you really to levels of having a real conversation beyond ordering coffee or something in a restaurant. It's very for situation based. So it doesn't give you clear understanding of the language. If you study with a private tutor, that would be more helpful. But if, for example, you want to go to a private university to an English speaking program, Duolingo would be sufficient. But if you plan to be, I don't know, a nurse in Germany, so you have to learn German way before you come here. And but that's a whole different program. It's very specific. So learn German but definitely depends on your goals. And don't, sometimes it's easier to learn the language when you arrive, and be open to learn it. It's not as difficult as people do it, as people make it. So please think about it. A lot of people are afraid of this language. That's why, I'm kind of like, it's important to talk about it. Make friends, either internationals or German, through the internet, or through the, it sounds like stranger danger, but I mean Facebook groups or other forums, or even there are relocation, immigration groups that people meetups in the origin countries. So this is something good. And of course, if you're coming for a pre-visit, like to visit, to prepare what we call relocation tour, so then it would be very helpful to meet people with the same interests. So when you come to Germany, it would be easier for you. You know at least one person to not to rely on. It's not always nice that someone that is your friend has to stop their, everything in order to help you. Um, when we have this process with families, with individuals, we are mostly most of the times we are the first and only person, people that they know in Germany before they come, but we give in our process the tools of how to make friendships. Germans are difficult. Don't expect to meet Germans and be friends with Germans on your first day. It's they're, well, we're going to talk about that later. They're not weird. A lot of people think they're cold. They're not. I'm married to a German, full disclaimer. But and I met him when I went to. I was a guest at this German poetry night that I just went to improve my listening comprehension. And this guy sat next to me, and I'm so used to Germans not talking to me because they just keep their respect, and they don't approach you if you don't give any kind of sign of permission. So I was very happy. And the only time that it happened to me in the already 2 years that I was in Germany, the only time that a German actually approached me intentionally without my permission, he became my husband. So I don't know what to tell you about that. So maybe it's, you know, be ready for cultural differences and shocks. So besides what we talked about, how quiet things are, less stressful, there are actually many more culture shocks about, for example, kids walk alone or travel alone to school. It's even when they're 7, 8. Most of them are taught to be independent from really young age. For example, you don't have to, I know that's for Americans, you don't have to pay the bill directly at the doctor's office. There's health insurance companies that are responsible for this. Mental therapy is free for publicly insured people. The default of water costs money in restaurant. If you order money, if you order water, so they cost money, and usually they are sparkling. They're not still. So if you're interested specifically in still, you have to order it. And of course, there's the Autobahn that it's, well, a little bit different than the ones that you know in your every origin country. It's not the whole, um, it's not the all Autobahn. All the highways are very unlimited speed. Some parts of it, most parts of it, actually. So if you plan to, drive 150 kilometer per hour, I think it's a little bit less in miles per hour, keep on the right. On the left, there are the 200 and above. And that's why you don't see, I saw that Donald Trump asked why there are not not many American cars in Germany, because American cars probably wouldn't keep up. Even though I know there's a progress you see here and there, more American cars, but you can see mostly the rest, and of course, including the Germans. I saw a video of Tom Hanks explaining about the Autobahn, that they were driving on the right and it was very, very fast. And then a car moved to the left and it was like, zoom, zoom. And yeah, it's very, very fast and it's very, very scary, but they teach them how to drive well. So the number of accidents in Germany is pretty much lower than other countries. Unfortunately, not enough, but still. Okay, I'll finish just in two things, and then I'll give the Brendan some place to tell his story. Open your mind. Open your mind means that there are a lot of different things here in Germany that you probably not used to from your home country, most home countries. We have equality for all law that allows every person to get married with the person that he loves, age restrictions, obviously, and number of spouses, of course. It's limited to one. So this is, but we're equal. And of course, we have FKK, which is FKK. And then it means that free body culture. There are beaches that are specifically for nudity, and no one cares. And it's really, really weird for a lot of people. For me, for example, that was one of the reasons why I chose to come to Germany. Not the FKK, but that no one cares. And it was great. I could walk in the street, nobody cared. Nobody. It's very safe for women in most places in Germany. Of course, not everywhere because it's a big country, but in most places it's very safe for women, for people. So you can walk at night and nobody would care. It was very hard for me to actually accept that at the beginning because I'm coming from Tel Aviv. It's to say the least, not very safe for women. Open your mind means also that's not about all you. If you sit in the U-Bahn, which is the underground, and someone stares at you, it doesn't mean that it's you, that something is wrong with you. Usually they're Germans, and they just stare. It's a thing. It's nothing bad or nothing that has to do with you. They just stare. So not to come with a bad attitude of, hey, you stare at me, so you do something. No, they just stare. That's okay. And the last thing that I want to talk about is to manage expectation. Not everything is butterflies and flowers. And to move to a new country is not an easy process. It's not easy if you're doing this alone. If you're doing it as a family, as a couple, with no kids, it's not easy. And you have to remember that for every step of the way. When we do, we accompany, we guide families and individuals throughout this process, we always remind them it's not the same as you used to. It's going to be all new. You're going to have the process, you're going to experience the process differently from person to person. And it's really, really important to remember if one person, for example, the one partner works and the other one is not, it's really hard, and one has to stay with the kids and or have them with the adjustment period in the kindergarten. It brings up a lot of pressure that maybe wasn't there before, but you have to manage the expectation even before to know that things are going to happen. And I'm gonna stop here. I'm gonna let Brendan to take here his time, and then we're gonna continue for Q&A. So if you have, and you can also have Q&A with Brendan also. We're gonna answer both of us to the questions. So yes, let me put
Oh,
you on.
awesome. Thanks, Tal. So my name's Brandon. I've been living with my partner in Berlin since May. We made the jump just over the course of a couple of years of trying to decide where we wanted to end up. There's been a lot of learnings. I would say the biggest thing is rely on the people that you are talking to. So using Tal, if you use her services, that's what they're there for. So use them as best you can. Um, and also allowing yourself to be open to researching. I know she already mentioned it, but one of the biggest things that happened for us is we knew we wanted to leave. Oh, I should say I'm from the U.S. Originally Iowa, and then San Diego most recently, and then moved here. So when we decided to make the move, me and my partner, we knew we wanted to be in Europe. We didn't know where we wanted to be in Europe, so we started doing a lot of research. And I would say that is probably one of the biggest learning keys because I mean, you hear a lot of things, you see a lot of things, but until you actually take the time to pause and reflect on each individual spot that you're looking at, you don't learn all the ins and outs. So, she mentioned a lot of great resources. I would throw in YouTube. The YouTube channels that we've watched have been, I would say, life changing, because they give tidbits about real life. So like we watch, I don't know the name of it off the top of my head. I'd put Ryan on to say it over me, but we watch this couple all the time, and they walk you through like how to do laundry in Germany, which you wouldn't think is a thing that you would have to worry about going to a new country, but it is very different, because the fabrics and the synthetic fabrics in the US are made to last in a dryer, whereas European products, not necessarily true. So most people don't use a dryer, so they don't have to worry about those things, especially with elastics. Like little tiny details that go a long way really get pointed out in things like YouTube channels. So anyway, so we decided we were going to move to Europe. So we started the process actually pretty quickly. We started watching shows that were like Swedish Death Cleaners on Hulu, and I highly recommend it. I know it sounds very tragic, but it kind of helps you reassess all of your clutter, all of the things you don't use. Because one of the most stressful things from our experience that we were going, because we moved across the country in the US, both of us separately, before we met each other in the US. And we knew that the move was one of the biggest, moving your stuff is one of the biggest challenges. So we started whittling down our closets. Our storage space was nothing at that point. We set up a donate box and a trash box that we just constantly kept throwing stuff into, and a sell box actually. Sold some of stuff on eBay over the years. Went really far, and we utilized that money towards like a savings account, and how you would have you end up having a lot more from the junk that you sell than you would expect just because of things. Thanks, Brian. He put it in the chat. It's called Simply Germany. That's one of my favorite YouTube channels that we watch. So, so one of the things that we really did after we started to whittle down our closet and figure out what was going to be going with is figuring out where you're going to go. And I know that sounds like it's backwards, but it actually helped a lot because once we figured out where we wanted to end, which was Berlin, we started looking at square footage for my US friends, or meters for everyone else, of what apartments and flats look like in Berlin versus cost. And then you start looking into salaries, and you kind of go down the deep, dark web of what is it actually going to look like. But then there's a lot of very positive things you find. So, for example, salary. A lot of people know that salaries in Berlin are quite a bit less than the US, but obviously the cost of living is one of those factors that you have to measure. And one of the biggest wins for my pocketbook was not having to pay a car payment, car insurance every single month because it's the same as a flat. Well, it was how much I was paying between those two things alone. So I already cut half of my monthly expenses just thinking about the transportation cost. And then we start looking at how much square footage and what space you'll have. Obviously, you don't know what flat you're going to necessarily end up in, but you can have a good idea of what you're going to be looking for the more you research you do once you find what city or location you're planning to relocate to. Um, then you can start doing things where you use practical um, reasoning to make those decisions. So, for example, we decided to take no furniture. That's a scary thought for a lot of people. We thought about the shipping containers through a lot of research and the pods and how much it would be to ship all of those items. And we didn't think it was worth when we could just buy new furniture or used furniture that is very similar and it's almost the same price as the shipping from where we were coming from. So doing that kind of research of knowing how much each of these things cost really benefit long term your pocketbook. But then it also helps you make a decision like we decided to do a furnished flat to start. So we decided to pay a little more for our first year, which is benefiting us more than we thought because we love our area. We're also in Charlottenburg in Berlin, and I love it. It is a quiet area. I will second that. But we decided to do the furnish to start. And then what's really nice about a lot of the flats within Germany is as you accumulate furniture, a lot of the landlords will move their furniture out. So you can start to make it your own before you move into a fully empty flat. Which a cultural difference, especially for anyone that's from the US, you have to build a kitchen in about 50% of the flats right now. So if you move into a flat and it's an empty flat, it probably doesn't have a kitchen, which is very shocking culturally. I've never even heard of it until we started looking at flats here. So that's a big thing to keep in mind is those things start to pop up the more you research. And I can't stress that enough. Like, luckily my partner is amazing at doing like stuff like that. So he always finds all these fun channels like Simply Germany that he just put in the chat. And it pays off a lot. So after you start to kind of like for us, once we started to find what worked for us for the shipping, I started asking friends and family of creative solutions. And it is kind of shocking how many people had very creative solutions for shipping things across the world. And I found that my company, which was a coffee company, just based in San Diego, actually did international shipping and had a discounted label that they could use. So it sounds weird. I would have never thought about it, but just saying it to my boss out loud, like, oh, we're going to move to Germany at some point in my life. Do you have any like suggestions? Have you ever had to ship something really far? He's like, we do it every day with coffee. I was like, oh, duh. And he was like, yes, you can use our label, which is going to be a lot cheaper than because they get to use a business partnership with FedEx. So there's things like that that surprise you along the way, the more you talk about it and the more you ask questions to people. And I highly recommend that. And it opens up a door to friendships that sometimes happen in weird and mysterious ways. So we came across Tal through a friend who is Israeli who had just moved. Had he moved? I don't even know if he had actually moved yet. And it doesn't matter. Anyway, so he had just said, I was complaining one day because we were trying to do it by ourselves. And he was just like, well, why don't you reach out to Tal? And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I did out of a lot of anxiety, and Tal calmed me down and took the reins, which was nice because we had ran into a couple of hiccups. And I highly recommend the more you talk about your move, the more solutions pop up. So a lot of people get stuck in the mindset of like, I'm doing this on my own. You're probably not. You don't need to. There's a lot of people who support you. It's just we're used to our bubbles where we're at, and sometimes reach out in different ways like Facebook groups, or when you're visiting, saying it at a bar in front of a friend, which is what happened to us. It goes a long way. So, but when the time comes, when you finally start shipping everything, some of the biggest learning moments and culturally learning moments is Germany loves their rules. They love rules and they love long processes. So just be prepared. There are a lot of hoops that they sometimes will make you jump through. That's a big portion of why we utilized Tal as much as we did, because she helped with a lot of that stuff. But even some things that like our German friends warned us about that we didn't take serious. So we knew that we had to create a full list with all the details of everything we ship because customs is going to stop it. And my list was not good. I highly recommend taking the time to put a very detailed list with actual dollar amounts of how much each thing cost and having that handy because customs is most likely going to stop whatever you ship. And then you have to claim it as household goods as what you're bringing into the country. And if it's within 6 months of your move, you actually have to pay taxes on it. So the more expensive things, like my partner rides motorcycles, so he has a motorcycle suit that came across. I didn't have the receipt when they asked for it, so we had to do a lot of research and deep dove. Long story short, it worked out, but it was something that I was not prepared for. It caused a lot of unnecessary stress, and it was something I was warned about, and I just didn't take the warning. So when someone says they follow the rules, I mean they literally go through every little detail, sometimes to a pain. So make sure you declare all the valuables when you come across, because we also ran into that. Even though we didn't need a visa to enter because we were on a visitor visa, we didn't claim the items as our household goods for a move because we were like, we're on a visitor visa. That is a mistake that we've learned from. And basically, when you come on a visitor visa, if you plan to stay, you should declare those valuables and have the receipts handy. For example, personal laptops, because they will seize those things the next time you come across if you did not declare them, which has happened. So I highly recommend making sure you know all the little tiny rules, doing your own research, and then a lot of the paperwork. I think Tal really supports a lot of that work. The only thing that I would maybe piggyback on is if you're an American, like one thing you don't think about is having an American address if you don't live there. If you're going to keep your citizenship, you actually have to. Or if you keep certain banks, you have to have an American address still. So we both utilize an address within our family, but you can use friends, family. I still use my old address right now, actually, because he's my best friend. So it's easy. So finding different solutions through means that are easy like that help. But also little details like driver's license. We both come from states that would have transferred perfectly fine, but our latest address is from California, so we have to retake both of the written and the driving tests coming from California, which is very unique. Only about 13 states, I think, I don't know the number, about 13 states require you to take both when you transfer your driver's license. So it is good to know all those little niche things that you wouldn't normally look into. So depending on which country you come from or which state in a country, it might vary. But yeah, I think that those are some of the biggest important things. Culturally, German stare is a thing. Don't overthink it when people stare at you. I highly, highly, highly encourage that. And that's pretty much where I would leave that. Yeah. I'll pass it back to you, Tal.
Thank you. I'll put us both, and if you don't mind, I'll add myself to you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And yeah, there are a few things actually that we were asked. And you talked about visitor visa. So it's basically not a visa because you don't need any. You just come as a visitor. But that it actually comes with the question that we were asked here. Can you assist with Chansekarte visa when arriving to Germany? So, and that's from an Israeli. So no visa is needed before you arrive to Germany. After you arrive to Germany, for example, Chansekarte, personally, I don't recommend. You have so many other options. Work visa, if you find a job that would be a workplace that would be able to sponsor you, freelancer visa, student visa, job seeking visa, so many. Now, when I'm talking about residence permit for the Israelis and Americans here, there are so many options that to start the process in your home country, that would be just a waste of time. And a Chansekarte, which is a permit to stay in Germany for 1 year and work in any kind of work, that's okay, but the lines are very, well, very long. Um, but let's take, Brennan, I think that's a question for you. Does that mean it's not weird if we stare back? That sounds like an odd question, but I'm wondering.
It's not an odd question. I don't. I I find it uncomfortable for me to stare at someone. So, me personally, it's not usually my go-to. I usually just look past people, especially on the U-Bahn and the S-Bahn. Like you'll find the public transportation in particular, you're facing each other, so you're kind of forced to look at each other in some of those scenarios. So you can look out the window above them. A lot of people play on their phone. There's a lot of other solutions, but if you do stare at someone, they're probably not going to be as uncomfortable as you would expect culturally in the US, for example. Usually people look away pretty quickly when you're staring at them.
I'll go for the first question. That how long does it take for a residence permit to take to process? So I think it's well a tricky question, but it depends on the state. It depends on the village or city that you're going to be living in. It really changes. I can tell a story of one of our clients that he intended to apply as a freelancer. We managed, that was back in the day when it was possible to schedule an appointment in Berlin in advance before you're coming to Germany. Now it's not possible anymore. And then he came in May and he had to wait until August. So, and then he was given, I'm very proud of that actually, that freelancers, it's not very often that they get the freelancer approval on the spot, but usually it may take up to 6 months because they have to go through a process, and usually it's for 2 years, but in that case we had for 3 years on the spot, so it's very happy. And we had also others that for work visa, um, they had to go through the company that actually brought them to Germany, didn't want to sponsor them for the fast track at the end, and they had to go through the regular channels, and that was, how do I call it, limbo. Uh, like, and they had to wait for 8 months, something like that, until they found basically another job, but they were here legally. In other places, in Hamburg, for example, for family reunification, it takes about 6 months. Karlsruhe, it takes about 3 months. Stuttgart, arrive if you have European citizenship, better. It's extremely long. And other, it depends on the type of the residence permit. It depends on how available they are. But it can take up to 8, 10 months, depends on the place. Um, can you explain a little bit about health insurance, public versus private? Um, Maybe Brendan, you can take it. Oh, for how was the private insurance experience for you at the beginning?
Pretty seamless. Jumping on. Well, you said they don't use that anymore, though, right? I don't want to say the name of that anymore.
No, no,
Uh,
they do use expats, yes.
yeah, okay. So I'm currently on private until I restart. But I'll be on public eventually. So I don't know public per se, but it's been a breeze. It's relatively cheap. I mean, it's not quite fair to compare because everything in the US is very expensive on healthcare. Um, but it like doesn't even compare. It reminds me of like when I so I worked for Starbucks when I was 18, for example, back in the US, and my health insurance was 150 a month. And that's the lowest I've ever seen in my life for anyone. And it is 50 something, 70 now. I don't know, something like that, which is mind blowing and it's private. So um, I'm impressed by it and it's very easy to sign up for. I also just one more thing about healthcare is if you're coming from a country that like it's kind of hard to get a hold of healthcare records. I highly recommend showing up in person. That's what we had to do to get ours printed off, and they would only do the full print off. So I have like a stack of papers, and I don't have a history of anything, so I don't understand that. But whatever. So yeah, just to keep that in mind to gather all that stuff before you go to.
Well, I'm going to say a few words because the healthcare situation here, the system is really complicated and takes, usually we do between 2 to 3 initial Zoom meetings at the beginning of the process of the relocation prep service. And this takes at least one meeting. So in just different words, the public is indeed usually better than the private. Private is mostly for minimum, for and not pre-existing stuff and very, something that is for emergencies if you take the cheapest one or one of the cheapest. If you take premium, it's very hard to move afterwards to the public one. Public one you can get mostly when you're an employee, but not limited to. But again, it's huge, huge, huge topic, and we do advise and talk about it during the relocation prep service. Um, do you recommend a pre-visit in order to find an apartment? I do recommend the pre-visit, not to find an apartment. We do on our relocation tours, we build customized to the people that come, and then we show 3 neighborhoods in a few hours, and it's very intensive, and we talk about the pros and the cons of the neighborhoods that might fit them, and they might like, and explain how to look at things. Apartments, it's very hard to secure and there are ways to find them. Not, as Brendan said, it's not really recommended to start working on apartment for long term. And with long term, I mean 12 months, more than 12 months, or as we call it, unlimited contract. Short term is 3 to 12 months. Usually don't do less than 3 because mostly the 3 months above they're furnished apartments and they're good for registration in the States. So this is very important if you want to continue your life here. So I think we have to stop here. Otherwise, we gonna get, I see questions about visas and residence permit. And if you don't know what to decide, we do have a visa consultation survey, so you can contact the info email that I wrote in the chat, and I'm also going to write it in the email that I'm going to send you after the webinar. And I want to thank you all for coming, and thank you, especially you, Brendan, for sharing your story and stories. And I really appreciate you coming here and coming in front of everybody and talking about that.